Today we're going to do a grid drawing. And to do a grid drawing, we're going to use pencil. It's going to be black and white. We're just using regular pencil. And to start, you need to find a suitable image that you would like to reproduce. Where do you find those photographs? Well, you can take a look in a newspaper. There's lots of pictures in the newspapers. Find one that you like. That one looks pretty good if you like basketball. Any kind of books you might have around the house. Magazines, of course, are probably the best if you have some magazines in your house. I've already found a picture in here that I like. It's this one. Here I'm going to do this picture. And you can cut it out, or you could just leave it. We are going to draw on top of it a little bit. So make sure it's not a book or magazine that you're precious about. You don't want to wreck it at all. We're going to use this one. I'm going to show you the next step. Okay, so I cut out the picture, and as you can see, I glued it onto a piece of A4 paper. That just makes it easier for the next step. When you're using glue, I would recommend using one of these kind of glue sticks. It's a little bit drier. It's better than this kind of glue stick, which is very, very liquid. And the reason is if I use this one on the paper, it's going to make the paper a little bit wrinkled. It won't be straight. So for this particular project, if you have this kind of glue, it would be much better. If you don't have glue, you could use tape. You could really use anything. If you have a picture that you cannot cut out, that's okay too. You can just do some very light pencil lines on the top, which I'll show you. You can erase it afterwards. You have a lot of different options here that you can use for this. I've cut this out. Now I'm going to use this ruler, and I'm going to measure equal squares, equally sized squares, all across here. Each square is going to have different information, which I'm going to transfer to my drawing. So you can see now that I've done the grid, the boxes, through the picture. Each one is an equal size. And the size that I chose for this seemed like a good size. Depending on how big your picture is, you can decide. You just want enough information in each box that you can kind of use that. If the boxes are too small, it's going to take too long to do your drawing. If the boxes are too big, it's not really going to be very helpful as far as your proportions and getting your sizes correct. Okay? The next step is we're going to register these boxes. The way we're going to do that is just give them letters or numbers. A, B, C, D, E, and then F on the top, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay. So as I'm looking at the proportions and the squares, I can follow along. A4 is here. This is C4. This is E8, okay? What we're going to do with our drawing is we're going to take a smaller drawing and we're going to scale it up. If you have a huge drawing, you want to scale it down. That's possible too. We don't want to make it exactly the same size. Part of why we do this is to change the scale. The next step I'm going to do is a grid on this paper, and then we're going to do the same letters and numbers on the side so that we can transfer our proportions and lines to this piece of paper. I finished making my grid. The next step is you're going to look where you have certain information. I just have horizontal lines in most of these boxes, so I'm going to focus more on the figure itself. What you're going to do is find the box. Here's D1. On the tip of his hat, you're just going to do a line drawing. We're not going to do any shading yet. We're just going to get the proportions first with the line drawing. As much detail as you can, just in lines, and then later on we're going to add the shades, the lightness and the darkness, using pencil again. But for now, just trace out the proportions that we're going to transfer them to this slightly larger grid. Okay, so as you can see, I've transferred the line drawing from the photograph to my actual drawing here, and just by going ½ centimeter bigger, from 2.5 to 3, you can see the size has changed quite a bit. One of the tricks that you can do is that when you're looking at your drawing, you can notice where a line meets the intersection of a square. So you can see here, C1, D1, C1, D1 here, the hat kind of crosses over. So you can use that as a reference. Anytime that happens, it's really helpful. You can see here along this line, between B and C, the jacket, the shirt that he's wearing, goes along that line. So I can use that here as a reference again. Look for any times that there's a halfway point on the box, for example. So here, the end of the shoe is kind of halfway. So I go over to the box and kind of halfway to get those proportions. Okay? Your inclination is probably to do things that you recognize, like the head. Often we make the head too big. So just kind of double check your proportions. You don't have to draw a person. You could do a picture of a forest or a lake or anything that you like to do. A lot of times we'll want to draw people, obviously, but it doesn't have to be people. Drawing people is probably one of the most difficult things. It's a challenge. I'm not saying don't do people. Of course you can do people. But whatever photograph kind of interests you and you would like to reproduce using pencil. That's the end of part 1. If you have your picture done up to this point, you have your line drawing, your proportions look good, then you can wait until next week to start work on your shading. If you are ready to go on shading, you can keep watching the video. Remember to take a photograph of your artwork when it's half finished and when it's fully finished, and submit both of those for each of the weeks to Google Classroom.